Hey, what's up, y'all? Happy Wednesday. And, look, I think real quick, we'd be doing a real big disservice if we just kind of jumped right into Luke 7 without putting a bow on Luke 6. You see, Luke 6 in reality is like a discipleship manual. It's Jesus teaching. If you notice, if you have a red letter Bible, all the words are red letter. This Jesus talking, right? He's teaching with his words what it means to follow him. I've heard some commentators call it a discipleship manual, if you will. And so that's essentially what chapter 6 is. But as we move into chapter 7, 8, and 9, those are more of Jesus teaching by example. So in 6, he taught by words. In 7, 8, and 9, he's teaching by example. And I think that's important to note before we jump into chapter 7, because as we go into chapter 7, he starts out with where we should always all start out, and that's great faith. This is chapter 7. This story we're going to cover these next few weeks is a story of great faith, what it looks like to have great faith. And so there's always no better place to start than that. And so before we jump into chapter 7, though, there's a couple of key things that I think it's important to know before we dive in. Number one, this story takes place in Capernaum, which is honestly, it's Jesus's home base, right? This is where pretty much he would always come back to. It's where a majority of his miracles had taken place. You see, Jesus would visit Jerusalem, he would visit different areas, but he would always come back to this place. This was his home base. The second thing I want to recognize is this story focuses on a centurion. Now, a centurion is a Roman soldier who's over 100 Roman soldiers. Now, Roman soldiers were not exactly celebrated in the Bible, right? Because remember, Rome was oppressing Israel. And so a centurion was that picture of oppression for the Israeli people, although this guy was different. And we're going to see just how different he was in the verses to come. And so having said that, let me jump in to chapter 7, verse 1, where Luke writes, after he finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, after he got done preaching, he entered Capernaum. Now a centurion had a servant who was sick to the point of death, who was highly valued by him. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews. He heard, so he sent for. The Jews asking him to come and heal his servant. So let's just take it at face value. Here's this Roman centurion. He's over 100 soldiers. He has servants. So homeboy's got money, right? He's living large. He's got a good life. And this servant is sick. And Luke, who is a doctor, Dr. Luke, says that he's at the point of death. So he ain't messing around. And I love that this centurion highly values the servant. I think that says a lot about his character and how other people viewed him. We'll see that in the verses to come. But I think there's something here that really grabbed my attention, honestly, and that's where I want to get to today, is this idea that he heard, so he sent. He heard, so he sent. He heard, so there was an action. He responded. This centurion turned to Jesus to heal his servant. Now, we can read right over that and be like, yeah, what's the big deal? Jesus heals a lot of people in this book. I get it. You're right. But put yourself back then. He's a centurion turning to Jesus for healing. The centurion probably could have sent his servant to Rome. The centurion who had money, had whatever he wanted, was a government official, could have had the best doctors healing his servant. Did he turn that way? No. He turned to Jesus. He heard, so he sent. He responded. That's his first act of faith. He responded in faith because of the stories he had heard about Jesus. He's like, that guy can fix him. That guy can heal him. Get me that guy. And the thing that just caught my attention about that is it's not like he's a disciple, right? It's not like he shows up at church every week. He's not showing up at the temple. He's not giving money. He's not serving. He's a centurion. He's a Roman soldier. He probably got to that position by how good he could kill people. What I mean by that is he's the most unlikely suspect to reach out for Jesus. And here we see it in this book. a man who is the most unlikely person to reach out for Jesus, is responding in great faith. And so I don't know what that looks like for you today. You know, this guy who was probably the most, probably one of the most despised, heard about Jesus and sent for him because he knew where his help come from. And so I don't know what that looks like for you today. I don't know where you need to apply some faith, but it's there. It's a gift. If you've heard about Jesus, respond towards Jesus. Whatever that is in your life, respond and lift it towards Jesus. And while I'm on that, you know what? As I'm talking about Capernaum and Israel, obviously you have seen the news and what's happening there. And it's not a political thing. It's just, I'm not saying it's the second coming of Jesus. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying right now there are families being torn apart. There are innocent people being murdered. There are babies and kids being killed. It's just heart-wrenching. And so please pray. Just pray. Pray that God would intervene, whatever that looks like. Anyway, y'all, I hope you have a great Wednesday. We'll see you next week.